Imagine walking into a high-profile auction, surrounded by billionaires, and watching a single bottle of wine sell for more than the price of a luxury sports car. Sounds insane, right? But what if I told you that some of the world's rarest wines are so exclusive that you may never get a chance to taste them ever? These bottles aren't just drinks. They're status symbols, history in a glass, and investments worth millions. But what makes them so special? And why do the world's elite fight to own them? Stay with me, because today, we're diving into the most expensive wines ever sold, and the fascinating stories behind them. The untold story of Screaming Eagle 1992. In 1992, a small Napa Valley winery released a wine that would later become the most expensive bottle ever sold. This was the Screaming Eagle Cabernet Sauvignon 1992, a wine that defied all expectations. It all started with Jean Phillips, a former real estate agent who purchased a vineyard in 1986. She had no experience in winemaking, but she had a vision. She hired Heidi Barrett, a rising winemaker, to craft something unique. Together, they produced just 225 cases of the 1992 Screaming Eagle Cabernet Sauvignon. In 2000, at a charity auction in Napa Valley, something extraordinary happened. A single 6-liter bottle of Screaming Eagle 1992 was sold for a record-breaking $500,000. The crowd was stunned. A bottle of wine selling for $500,000? Why? The secret lay in its rarity, craftsmanship, and perfect balance of flavor. Critics praised it, calling it liquid gold. Robert Parker, a top wine critic, gave it a near-perfect 99-point rating, skyrocketing its demand. Only the ultra-rich could get their hands on it. Today, Screaming Eagle remains a cult wine, with bottles selling for $10,000 plus. The 1992 vintage remains a legend, proof that sometimes a simple idea can turn into something extraordinary. Would you ever pay that much for a single bottle? Let me know in the comments. The legendary story of Romanée-Conti 1945 and 1945. The world was at the end of World War II. But something extraordinary was happening in the vineyards of Burgundy, France. A small estate, Domaine de la Romanée-Conti, DRC, produced what would become the most valuable wine in history, the Romanée-Conti Grand Cru 1945. That year, only 600 bottles were made. But why so few? It was the last vintage before the estate's ancient Pinot Noir vines, some over 100 years old, were uprooted. This made the 1945 vintage the final chapter of a historic lineage. Fast forward to 2018, at an auction in New York, a single 750 milliliters bottle of Romanée-Conti 1945 shattered records, selling for $558,000. Moments later, another bottle sold for $496,000. The world was in shock. Why would someone pay this much for wine? The answer lies in its rarity, history, and legendary taste. Wine critics describe it as having unmatched complexity, with flavors of exotic spices, dark berries, and earthy tones. Robert Parker once called it the ultimate expression of Pinot Noir. Today, owning a bottle of Romanée-Conti 1945 is like owning a piece of history. But would you ever pay over $500,000 for a single sip? Let me know in the comments. The War Era Miracle of Château Rothschild 1945 and 1945. As World War II came to an end, a historic wine was being crafted in Bordeaux, France. That wine was Château Rothschild 1945, later recognized as one of the greatest vintages of all time. But what made it so special? During the war, the Mouton Rothschild estate was occupied by German forces. When the war ended, the Rothschild family reclaimed their vineyard and dedicated the 1945 vintage as a symbol of victory. To mark this historic moment, they designed a unique label featuring the V for Victory symbol, making it an instant collector's item. But it wasn't just a label. The 1945 Mouton Rothschild was a masterpiece of flavor. Critics called it liquid perfection, with notes of blackcurrant, tobacco, and spice. It received a 100-point rating from Robert Parker, a rare honor in the wine world. At a Sotheby's auction in 2006, A Jeroboam 5-liter bottle of Château Lafite Rothschild 1945 sold for an astonishing $310,700, making it one of the most expensive wines ever. Today, it remains a symbol of resilience, luxury, and history. Would you ever dream of owning a wine born from the ashes of war? Let me know in the comments. The legendary Château Cheval Blanc 1947 and 1947. France was experiencing one of its hottest summers in history. While most vineyards struggled, something magical happened at Château Cheval Blanc, a prestigious estate in Saint-Emilion, Bordeaux. The extreme heat led to an accidental miracle, creating a wine so unique that it became one of the greatest vintages ever made. What made the 1947 Château Cheval Blanc so special? Unlike modern winemaking, there was no temperature control during fermentation. The heat caused an unusually high sugar concentration, resulting in a wine that was bold, opulent, and silky smooth, a style never seen before. Experts described its flavors as an explosion of dark chocolate, exotic spices, and ripe plums. The legend of this wine grew over the decades. Then, in 2010, at a Christie's auction in Geneva, a 6-liter bottle of Château Cheval Blanc 1947 sold for a jaw-dropping $305,000. With only a few bottles left in the world, it became a rare collector's treasure. Today, wine lovers and collectors still call it the perfect Bordeaux. But here's the question: would you ever pay a fortune for a sip of history? Let me know in the comments. The lost treasure of Heidsieck Monopole 1907. Imagine opening a bottle of champagne that has been underwater for 80 years. Sounds like a scene from a movie, right? Well, this is the real story of Heidsieck Monopole 1907, one of the most expensive and mysterious champagnes ever sold in 1916. During World War I, a shipment of Heidsieck Monopole 1907 was on its way to the Russian imperial court of Tsar Nicholas II. But tragedy struck. The ship was torpedoed by a German submarine and sank to the bottom of the Baltic Sea. The bottles were lost for nearly a century then. In 1997, divers exploring the wreck discovered 2,000 perfectly preserved bottles lying in the icy depths. Thanks to the cold, dark conditions, the champagne remained in pristine condition, with its flavor still intact. When auctioned, some bottles fetched up to $275,000 each, making it one of the most valuable champagnes in history today. Heidsieck Monopole 1907 is a legend, a time capsule of a lost era. But here's the question: would you drink a champagne that survived a war, a shipwreck, and a century underwater? Let me know in the comments. The royal legacy of Château Lafite Rothschild 1869 and 1869. Deep in the vineyards of Pauillac, Bordeaux, a wine was crafted that would one day become one of the most expensive bottles ever sold, the legendary Château Lafite Rothschild 1869. But what makes this wine so special? For centuries, Château Lafite Rothschild has been known as the wine of kings. Even Emperor Qianlong of China in the 18th century was obsessed with it, calling it the celestial drink. The 1869 vintage, in particular, was an exceptionally rare masterpiece, produced in extremely limited quantities. Fast forward to 2010. At a Sotheby's auction in Hong Kong, 3 bottles of Château Lafite Rothschild 1869 went under the hammer. The bidding was intense, and to everyone's shock, a single 750 milliliters bottle sold for $230,000, smashing all previous records. The buyer? A mysterious Asian collector, proving just how much Lafite is revered in China. With its silky texture, deep fruit flavors, and legendary reputation, this wine is now a symbol of wealth and prestige. But here's the real question: if you owned a bottle of Château Lafite 1869, would you drink it or keep it as a priceless artifact? Let me know in the comments. The final masterpiece of Henri Jayer in 1999. The world of fine wine witnessed the last vintage from one of the most legendary winemakers, Henri Jayer. His cross-parent to 1999 became a symbol of perfection, selling for an astonishing $136,955 per bottle. But what made this wine so special? Henri Jayer, often called the God of Burgundy, was known for his revolutionary winemaking techniques. He believed in low yields, natural fermentation, and minimal intervention, crafting wines with unmatched elegance and complexity. His vineyard, Cross-Parentu, was once considered worthless due to its rocky soil. But Jayer saw potential where others didn't. His 1999 vintage was the last before his retirement, making it an instant collector's item. When bottles appeared at a Hong Kong auction in 2018, prices soared. A 12-bottle case sold for $1.6 million, setting records in the wine world. Today, Henri Jayer's wines are nearly impossible to find, and those lucky enough to own a bottle treat it as liquid gold. But here's the question: if you had the chance to taste a wine made by a true legend, would you take a sip or keep it untouched? Let me know in the comments. The Modern Legend of Domaine Leroy Musigny 2012 and 2012. Burgundy saw one of its most challenging yet extraordinary vintages. From this, Domaine Leroy Musigny Grand Cru 2012 emerged, not just as a great wine, but as a masterpiece worth $113,000 per bottle. But what makes it so valuable? The secret lies in Lullabies Leroy, the legendary winemaker behind Domaine Leroy. Once a co-owner of Domaine de la Romanée-Conti, DRC, she left to create her own empire, using strict biodynamic farming and ultra-low yields. This means only a tiny number of bottles are produced each year, making them incredibly rare. The 2012 vintage was particularly special. Despite a tough growing season with frost and hail, the wine turned out to be rich, intense, and perfectly balanced. Critics praised it for its silky texture, deep cherry flavors, and incredible aging potential. At a Hong Kong auction, collectors fought over a single 750 milliliters bottle, driving its price to $113,000. Today, it remains one of the most expensive modern wines ever made. Would you ever spend six figures on a wine from the 21st century? Or do you think only historic vintages deserve such a price? Let me know in the comments. The iconic Cheval Blanc St-Emilion 1947 and 1947. A scorching heatwave hit Bordeaux, France, creating one of the most unusual and legendary wines of all time, Cheval Blanc St-Emilion 1947. Decades later, this bottle would sell for an astonishing $135,125, making it one of the most expensive wines ever. But what makes it so special? The extreme heat that caused fermentation challenges, leading to a high alcohol, richly concentrated wine. Unlike most Bordeaux wines, this vintage had an almost port-like intensity, with flavors of dark chocolate, exotic spices, and ripe plums. It was completely unique, something that could never be replicated. Despite breaking the traditional Bordeaux style, critics loved it. It received a 100-point rating from Robert Parker, and wine lovers called it the most hedonistic Bordeaux ever made. In 2010, at a Christie's auction, a 6-liter bottle of Cheval Blanc 1947 sold for $304,375, while standard 750 milliliters bottles have reached up to $135,125. Even today, it remains a gold standard for Bordeaux wines. But here's the big question: would you pay six figures for a bottle that defies tradition? Or do you prefer wines that stick to the rules? Let me know in the comments. Now that you've seen how wine can sell for the price of a mansion, imagine what it's like to actually own one of the world's most luxurious homes. If you thought these wines were expensive, wait until you see the billion-dollar estates of Beverly Hills. Check out our next video, Inside the Most Expensive Homes in Beverly Hills, a luxury tour. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. And hey, if you love high-end luxury, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We bring you the most exclusive, jaw-dropping stories from the world of wealth, and you won't want to be left out. See you in the next one.